All right, let's get right into it. Today we're tackling a real design mystery. How a style of furniture that was once considered totally worthless made such a dramatic comeback that individual pieces now sell for millions of dollars at auction. It all starts with one event that basically changed everything.
I mean, really think about this for a second. How can one single table, just one piece of furniture, be worth almost $4 million? It sounds absolutely nuts, right? Well, it actually happened, and that moment really kicked off a whole new era.
And here's the number that sent an absolute shockwave through the design world: $3,824,000. In 2005, a table by a designer named Carlo Molino came up for auction at Christie's. The auction house thought it might sell for a couple $100,000, which was already a lot, but the final price? It blew past the estimate by 20 times. You can just imagine the stunned silence in that room.
Now, this wasn't just some fluke, not at all. According to Joshua Holdeman, who was the head of 20th century design at Sotheby's, this sale was a real watershed moment. It was the first time a mid-century piece hit a price like that, and it was a massive signal to everyone that these objects were no longer just old furniture. They were historically important and incredibly valuable.
So, that shocking price tag, that's our first big clue in this whole story. Now let's dig into the style itself.
To really understand this huge comeback, we have to know what we're even talking about. So, what exactly is mid-century modern?
At its core, it's pretty straightforward. Mid-century modern, or MCM, as you'll often hear it called, is the design style that popped up in the middle of the 20th century. And it covers everything, from furniture and houses to even graphic design. You know the look: clean lines, organic shapes, and a whole lot of new and interesting materials. But here's a little insider detail that even the experts still argue about. Most people just lump everything from the 30s to the 60s into the category. But the real purists? They'll tell you that authentic, true mid-century modern is really only that specific decade, right after the war, from 1947 to 1957. It just goes to show you how passionate people are about this stuff.
So here's the real question. How did this style, which was so out of fashion by the 1970s that people were literally throwing it out, stage such an incredible comeback? Let's trace the evidence.
It definitely wasn't an overnight thing. It was more of a slow burn that happened over a few decades. It really started in the 80s, when the movement finally got its catchy name. Then, in the 90s, the market started to catch on, and prices shot up. And by the 2000s, pop culture basically sealed the deal and made it the absolute height of cool.
And you're not going to believe this, but it all kicked off with a book in 1984. An author named Kara Greenberg wrote Mid-Century Modern Furniture of the 1950s. The best part? She later admitted she just totally made up the phrase mid-century modern. But you know what? It didn't matter. The name was perfect, it stuck, the book sold over 100,000 copies, and just like that, the style was back on the map.
This is the part of the story that's just so wild to me. Seriously, in the 1970s, you could barely give this stuff away. It was seen as your parents' old, dated junk. But by the 1990s, because of all that new interest, the auction market for these pieces just started to absolutely explode.
And here's the proof. In 1999, so 6 years before that nearly $4 million table, a George Nelson marshmallow sofa sold for $66,000. Now, at the time, that was just an unthinkable price for a piece of furniture like this. It was a clear sign that the market was getting seriously hot.
But the final piece of the puzzle, the thing that took mid-century modern from a niche collector's hobby to a full-blown mainstream phenomenon, well, that was the Mad Men effect.
When the show Mad Men came out, it wasn't just a drama about advertising. It was a masterclass in 1960s style. And all of a sudden, the furniture, the offices, that whole aesthetic you saw on screen became the absolute definition of cool. You combine that with influential design magazines like Wallpaper and Dwell, and a whole new generation was introduced to the style, and they just fell in love with it.
So, we've seen how a book, a booming auction market, and a smash hit TV show all work together to create this massive revival. And that brings us to the reality of the market for this stuff today.
And really, here's the bottom line. The secret is out. What you once could have found in a thrift store is now sitting in a high-end gallery. So if you love these designs and you want to start collecting original pieces today, you absolutely can. Just be warned, it is a very, very expensive pursuit.
So the whole journey of mid-century modern, from being seen as worthless to being worth millions, it just proves how much our tastes can change. And it leaves us with one last really fascinating question to think about. What forgotten style that we think is dated today is going to be the subject of a multi-million-dollar auction tomorrow?